Hey guys, there's just a few people on right now, so I'm going to finish prepping a little bit more, and then when we get a few more people on, I will go ahead and start. Hey guys, how's it going? Just waiting for a few more people to jump online, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'm just finishing up prepping some of the All Elite U seeds right now. All right, I was gonna say good morning, but it's afternoon. It's 1:30. It is hot out here, but got my shade set up, and I'll give you guys a quick little tour around my home nursery. This is where we grow the majority of the plants that HOK is able to propagate for our project sites. We do get a lot of our native plants that we put out on site from local native plant nurseries, Huiku Mauliola and Native Ecosystem Services. Those two are both Windward, Ko'olaupoco based nurseries that specialize in native seeds and native plants. So check them out if you ever want to get anything for your own yard. But a lot of the plants that we've been able to grow at our project sites throughout Ko'olaupoco and that are thriving and doing really well, we're able to harvest mature seeds and cuttings from those. And so it helps our nonprofit to keep costs down by propagating stuff, especially the really easy to propagate things, on our own. So I'm gonna grab you guys and flip this around, and I'll show you a bit of what we've got going on. This is what filming looks like, propping up the phone. So in our nursery, we have an area of ready to be planted. Up on the top, those are Ma'ohauhele, that's our native yellow hibiscus. This middle row here is Ojai, Suspania tomentosa, I think. Yeah. And that is a beach loving plant, full sun loving plant. And then on the bottom is some more shady things. Those are alehe'e trees. And then that's a little bit of what I'm going to be propagating today and splitting apart. This next shelf is still our intermediate phase. These ones need a little bit more love before it's time to go out into the field. So we've got younger Ojai here. We have Okuli Kuli. This one's going to go down on the mud flats at Hei'ia. We have more of the alehe'e trees. We have Ilima. And then this tray is a mixture of a'ali'i trees. There's some ma'o, the Hawaiian cotton, and some more Ilima in the back there. And then over here, we have some kupu-kupu ferns that I just split last week. Those are 2 kamani trees. Lots of akia that need to be separated and put into their own pots. So sometimes we'll put multiple seeds into each of these little plug trays to kind of maximize our planting and minimize the space that all of these take up in our very small home nursery. So these are eventually going to have to be split, and I'll show you guys a little bit of how to do that today, but we're going to do it with the uki uki. And then down here is some uki that I was working on splitting yesterday. So these were growing up in a very small pot, and I'd say probably 50 to 75 of these little ones all bunched together in one tiny pot. So we were able to split them out into 3 full trays yesterday. So we've got all of our pots over here. Some more plants in large tree pots, and of course storage. So prop back up a little bit more. Cool. Okay, so what I wanted to cover today was a really brief overview of the different propagation techniques, and then hopefully in May or in June, when we can all get together again, hoping it's June, we want to do some more in-depth propagation lessons and really have hands-on either packets for people to pick up and do on their own, or we'll have a get-together and do a propagation lesson sometime over the summer. So for HOK, we do propagation in usually one of 2 ways. I do like to take cuttings. That's the easiest way to get a tree or a plant to reproduce, to propagate itself. But doing cuttings, taking propagation from cuttings, means that you're getting a genetically identical plant. You're taking a clone of that plant. So it doesn't do a whole lot for genetic diversity of project sites. But some plants do really well with cuttings and not so well with seeds. So sometimes if we need a lot of plants quickly, we'll take cuttings of plants and get those propagated, because like I was showing before, these little ma'ohauhele, these are all taken from cuttings. And so they're genetically the same. They're a clone of the parent plant, but this one is already starting to flower, and it's only 7 inches tall. So that's already starting to flower there. Pretty awesome. So those will be able to go out onto our project starts and start to produce seed pretty quickly. The other way that we like to propagate, which does help with the genetics of a population, is by seed. So you've got sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. The sexual being the seed reproduction and the asexual being the cuttings. So I'm going to show you guys 2 different plants that we love to propagate by seed today. One is my favorite, and I'm going to use this awesome new feature that I found on Instagram to show you guys some seeds and the plants that we're talking about. So the first plant that I want to talk about is the a'ali'i. This is a really hardy native plant. It can be a very low growing shrub if it's growing along the coastline and in windy areas, but it can also be up in our music forest and grow into a larger tree. It has a really wide diversity in those pod colors too, so it makes it really interesting plant. You might have white or green types of pods all the way to that pinkish color you're seeing there, and then a full-on maroon color. So it's a really cool looking pod. They make those pillowy pods, and inside the pods are housed anywhere from 3 to 6. I was finding some capsules with 6 seeds in it today, which is pretty unique. Usually there's 1 to 3. So the picture that we see right now is the pods or the capsules, and you want to pick them when they're drying out. So this handful is showing the brown pods. The pods have browned and dried out. That means the seeds are ready inside. The ones that are still green, they're not quite ready. You may still be able to get viable seed from those, but you do want to pick them when they're nice and brown. So we've got some pods that were collected from our Hei'ia project site. So we've got kind of the same thing. We've got some green ones in here, some brown ones. This is one of my favorite flowers to make a layout of, actually. It takes a really long time, but when you string them together, they kind of interlock and sit, and you just string them together like you would a plumeria. But if you can make a 3 to 5 strand lay like this, and then they all twist together, they are beautiful. So with these pods, right there. This one actually has 4 wings on it. A lot of them have 3. Let's see if we can find a 3. There's a 3-winged pod right there. So with these pods, when they're dry, they pop open. They kind of break open really easily. Let's see, can you see that little black seed in there? So like I was saying before, I've been finding 2 seeds in these pods today. Look how dirty my fingernails are. It's amazing. So with these pods, I was finding 2 black seeds. Let's see how close I can get it. It's not going to... So 2 seeds in this one today, which is pretty cool. And then last night, I prepped some of these seeds. So a lot of seeds like to have a little bit of a kickstart. They kind of have to be woken up. So with these, we would put them into lukewarm water or just tap water overnight and let them soak. So as I break apart the rest of this capsule, I'm seeing 2 more seeds in each of these sections right there. So, pretty cool that this one is, that I was seeing 2. It's pretty rare that I find 2 per, and 6 seeds in total. That one actually had 8 because it was 4-winged. Super cool. So I'm putting them all into this little container of water. The seeds that have sunk to the bottom are typically the ones that were put into water last night. 24 to 36 hours gives them a little seed soak, a little helps to break down that hard outer shell of the seed, helps to wake them up a little bit. If you've got seeds that are still floating after 24 to 36 hours, then they probably aren't going to be viable. So you can go ahead and put them in the soil, but they're probably not going to germinate. So with seeds like this, I really like to use plug trays. So the plug trays can really maximize the amount of space, minimize the amount of space that you're taking up in your greenhouse or on your tables. And you can still put multiple seeds per hole if you've got that many seeds to work with. So we do have a lot of A'ali'i seeds. And so what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna start off by just putting 1 in each for now until I can prep some more seeds. So I just reach in there, get 1 seed out. Sometimes I'll use a pencil or the end of like a fork just to make a little hole. You can use a stick, your finger. I've already filled this whole tray up with soil, and when I'm doing propagation from seed, I like to use a mixture of soil that is 1 scoop. It's a 1 to 2, so a 1 to 2 ratio. 1 scoop of soil to 2 scoops of perlite. And perlite is this white substance that's in here, and it helps to aerate the soil and keep the soil loose, but it does also hold moisture, so it can help to keep your soil wetter and keep the seeds from drying out in the soil as well. So when I'm going to be propagating by seed, I would fill this whole tray up, and then I pack the soil down in so it's nice and tight. Water the whole tray so the soil is all wet, and then you just pull out one of those little seeds, make a little hole with your finger. It doesn't even have to be 1/4 of an inch deep. You can just put that seed down in there. Like I said, if you've got a lot of seeds to do this way, you can put multiple seeds in each. You're just gonna have to come back later in a month or 2 and separate those plants out if you end up with multiples growing. So that's it. I put 1 seed in there. We can grab another one and move down to the next row and work on it like this. So I'm just gonna do 1 row of these before I move on and talk about our next plant. And if you guys have questions to ask during this, you should see a feature on your end of Instagram. It's the square at the bottom with a question mark. And if you use that feature rather than just the chat stream, then I can pin it and I can see your question, and we'll be able to come back to it later. Okay, so I just have 2 more holes to fill. I use these 2 right here. And if I don't get all the way through a tray in 1 sitting, then I'll use a marker of some sort, either a stick to show me or a piece of flagging tape to show me where I've left off. So I'm going to stick this one right here, I know I've done the first row with the a'ali'i seeds. So there's the rest of our a'ali'i in there. I'm gonna put those aside for later. Okay. So the next plant that I want to talk about, if nobody's got questions about a'ali'i, the next one I want to talk about is ojai. This is another really amazing plant. It has such a unique flower to it. Those petals are arranged in a way that's called a collar and a keel. So the keel protects the reproductive parts of the plant. Both of these species, the a'ali'i and the ojai, do really well in full sun environments. More so, the ojai loves to be in really rocky kind of coastal areas, and it can grow right on top of rocks or in the crevices of rocks. That silvery gray color to the leaves helps to reflect sunlight, so it does really well in those coastal areas, and it's doing amazing at all of our project sites on the windward side. Let's see. So Good Eyes asked, how long does it take before you expect to see these sprouting? It really depends on how long that they've soaked, but usually within 2 weeks. For some other seeds, like the one that I'm going to be splitting later, I keep talking about it, but I'll show you guys now. So this is the uki, and there's probably 50 to 75 uki growing in here right now. We had a lot of trouble getting these to sprout. They kind of come up on their own, and this one, I think we had soil left over with uki seeds in it from last winter, not even this winter. So it took them, these seeds can lay dormant for a really long time, but I didn't really want to give up on them. So I just put them all into their own pots, and all of a sudden they started sprouting up this winter. So it took them a year to sprout. And that happens a lot with soil that I use or work with. If I know we've got seeds in there, I kind of just put soil together. I reuse soil sometimes if it's healthy and there's no bugs in it, and then I'll start to see something pop up in there. I'm like, wait, what is that? What are we growing? So these were definitely a surprise, but we didn't give up on them. We knew that they would take a while. So with the a'ali'i, they're usually pretty fast to sprout. So within a couple weeks, we should see something, maybe even within a week, especially if they've been soaking in this water overnight. Okay, so hope that answers your question. So with the ojai are part of the verbena family. So they make these really cool green bean looking pods. And we've got a whole big bowl of ojai pods. These are kind of a pain in the butt to open and get the seeds out. It's really nice to work on a table or with a towel laid out under you. So once these pods will be green when they're hanging on the plant, but once they are brown, you can open them, and sometimes you can split them right down the middle. I dropped it, but I didn't lose it. Oh, now I lost it. Let's see. So there is the one ojai seed. That one doesn't want to stay. So one ojai seed right there. And these pods can have quite a few. They're pretty long. So just that little end that I broke off had 2. So just that little section right there had 2 seeds in it. And sometimes if I'm getting good and I have sharp nails, I use my nail to run down the edge and split that pod straight open. And there's the seeds inside. Got 2 there. So I'm putting these ones into the water, and they are sinking immediately. So that's a good sign. They are viable seeds. These were collected a few months ago actually, but they can store really well. So I'll show you the difference of what I think is a viable seed versus one that's probably not gonna grow. So we've got this nice kind of greenish brown color, a light brown color. That's going to be a healthy seed. That one's sinking. But then we also have a really dark brown color. Get my finger wet so it'll stick. The really dark brown one right there. That does not look healthy to me. It did sink, so I'm gonna give it a chance and grow it and try it, but it just doesn't look like a very healthy seed to me. So I was able to open up the rest of that pod. I don't know if you guys can see all of the little seeds in there. And then I'm just gonna dump all those into the water to soak and to prep. Put that in there. Okay, so now we've got more ojai seeds. Some from yesterday are still floating, so those aren't gonna be viable, but a lot of the bigger ones have gone down into the bottom already. So ideally you'd want to soak those seeds as well for 24 to 36 hours. And I would keep all the seed varieties separate too. It just makes it easier for propagation, but for the sake of today, we've got them all in one little container. So the same way that we did the ali'i seeds, we're going to pull out the ojai seeds and get them into the other end. So this first row was our ali'i, so I'm gonna go all the way to the other row, and hopefully we'll meet in the middle with seeds later today. So I've got 3 seeds in my hand. Just make a little 1/4 inch deep hole and cover it over really gently. And then I probably won't water these again today, just because I pre-watered the soil before I stuck the seeds in. If you were to do this with dry soil and try to water after, you risk losing the seeds. So the seeds might actually float away when you try to water the soil. So when you're working with new plants, always water your pots and water the soil first. Let's grab 2 more to finish off this row. And then I have some cuttings to show you guys. Sorry, I should have gone back and made that bigger picture. There you go. Still getting new to this Instagram live thing, but it's been fun. So all week, or all month, if you guys have been able to join us on lives, we were doing tours of our project sites from around Ko'olaupoco, doing tours every Saturday. And then today we wanted to kind of show the back end, the back of the house, literally back of the house in our nursery. Okay, so we've got 1 row of ojai and 1 row of ali'i going on. I'll put those aside. And then I've got, oh, the other way to do this, if you don't have the plug trays, go ahead and use the big 4-inch pots. These are great for starting seeds as well, and they do give more space. So you can do 4 in 1, just kind of do seeds at each corner and just put a single seed in each hole, and then you've got another way to do it as well. Okay. Okay, so next I have 2 different species that I want to show you guys cuttings. So when I take a cutting, we do like to start with a clean pair of pruners, which I forgot to grab. So you like to clean off your pruners. You can use soap and water. You can use rubbing alcohol. Just clean those down. If you use rubbing alcohol, let that air off or give it a little rinse off. And then when you take a cutting from the parent tree, you like to use a 45-degree angle. So that increases the rooting surface that's going to be going down into the soil. So I do have a pair of scissors nearby that'll work for what we're going to be cutting today. So let's see. So I have my bucket down here of cuttings, and it has water in the bottom, so that these cuttings have been sitting in the shade since a few hours ago when I went to take some cuttings from our project at Kaha Garden. Yay, city parks are open now, so go check Kaha Garden out in Kailua. Walk through, run through on your way to get some exercise. Okay, so this is a cutting of Iliae. Iliae is a really awesome ground cover plant. We do like to use it in a lot of our restoration projects. It kind of creates these big mats. It doesn't often re-root itself to the ground as it grows, but it is a pretty sun-loving plant. It does like to have shade for parts of the day, but it can grow in full sun decently as well. The more shade it gets, the darker green and the happier it's gonna be. And typically it looks like this. It's a low growing bush. It can get about knee high, sometimes a little bit larger as the branches are growing out, but then they do get heavy and they'll kind of flop down and lay down again. When it's blooming, it has those amazing flowers, and the pods that you can see have little sticky hairs on them, and that's how this plant disperses. So if a bird or a mongoose or a person walks by, those pods will stick onto the person, and then as we or it continues to walk along, we go somewhere, bird cleans off its feathers, and the pods drop, and that's where the plant can start to take hold. So this is a cool plant. I like to put it on the young boys, the volunteers that come out as a little boutonniere. So it's a pretty cool plant. You can also make earrings, sticky little earrings. It's a fun one. So for cuttings, with cuttings it's pretty important to go slow, work slowly, take a look at what you're going to be working with. So I made a 45-degree cut down here on the bottom when I was out in the field taking cuttings. Now each of these joints, like the knuckles of the branch, those are called the nodes. The nodes are going to be where the roots start to grow from. So you want to make sure that when you're planting, you're putting at least one node underground, and then the next node up should have some vegetation, should have a leaf on it, because your plant still needs to photosynthesize to continue to grow and get energy. This would be a really long cutting. You want to have a cutting that's 4 to 6 inches long. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut off this bottom part. I'm going to use this node right there, those little bumps. I'm going to use this node as our underground node, and then this will be the top leaf here, this branch. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 45-degree angle right below that node, about 1/4 of an inch or so below the node, not too far below. Cut it there, and then I'm going to do a flat top cut at the top. This will help you, doing a flat cut at the top will help you to identify what weighs up if you put these back into a bucket. So I'll typically sit down with that big bucket of long cuttings and another bucket of water. I'll make all my tiny cuttings like this. I'll cut them down exactly how I want them, throw them into the bucket of water. So we're doing cuttings all at one time, and then I'll come back and put them all into the soil at another time. Let's see. Yes, thank you. Switching back to larger screen. Keep forgetting about that. Okay, there we go. So there's the node at the bottom, right there. Node at the bottom. We've got one more node in the middle here, and then the top. So I'm gonna clean off the rest of this branch right here. We don't need to have all that greenery. If you've got too much greenery on the plant, then you're gonna be losing a lot of water through the leaves. So you can trim that down. Sometimes you can even just cut the leaf in half. It's okay. These leaves might go into shock. The plant might look really bad. It might look like it's totally gonna die off within the first couple of days, even the first week. But just about after the first week or so, you should be able to see some new growth. And then typically after a month, I'll come back through and check all of the cuttings. And if they're wiggling in the pot, if there's no new growth, then they're not gonna grow. So I'll thin out, I'll come through and clean out the ones that aren't gonna grow. So with a cutting like this, that bottom node is what's gonna go underground. And you can just push these right into wet soil. So I just pushed it right into the center. And again, you can do multiples per pot if you're willing to come back later and separate them out again. And then I like to give the soil a really good pat. So I pack it down in there quite a bit so that that cutting isn't gonna flop over. Now with cuttings, it is possible some species do like to have a rooting hormone. The Elia is typically one of those that do like to have a rooting hormone on them. So I'm gonna take the cutting that we just used, I just pulled it back out, but I wanted to show you guys. I already have a little bit of rooting hormone mixed up. So we're gonna put that in, and this is going to help with the rooting. Some species don't need it. The Malahele I never use rooting hormone on this. It grows really easily from cuttings. The ELIA we don't have amazing success with. We probably only have about 50% success rate with the cuttings, but it can be higher if we're using the rooting hormone. There's two different types of rooting hormone. There's a root boost. This is just what I had here at home. This is a powdered substance, but I really like to use the liquid. And you would use different ratios. There's all awesome measuring lines here, different ratios for different types of plants, whether it's a woody species or a greener species. So just a few seconds in the rooting hormone is more than enough. And because our soil is already wet, and I'm not going to water them again today, that rooting hormone will really have a chance to set in and do its work over the next 24 hours. I'll probably water, well, maybe the next 12 hours or so. I'll water early tomorrow morning. So that is one new ELIA cutting right there. I'm going to put that one aside. As we get into, so this is the top of the cutting that I just took off, and that's pretty tiny compared to my finger. It's pretty tiny. Most cuttings you want to have something that's about pencil size. Anything smaller and you're going to have trouble getting that to root. It's just too new, too green, too flimsy. So you really do want to use a plant that's pretty strong and hardy. So this would be another great option for taking a cutting. Of course this is the first node here, so this is going to have to be underground. So I'm going to cut this whole branch off. Okay, cut that whole branch off there, and then up to you, depends how big you really want to make your cutting. I'll probably just cut this part off and cut a bit more of this branch down on the side, and we can cut that big leaf off just to save this one from losing any water. And I'm going to cut this bottom. The bottom is about 1 inch long. I'm going to cut it down to about 1/2 inch and use the 45-degree angle. So there's another cutting there, a few seconds in the rooting hormone, and then into soil. Okay, just like that. Push straight down into the soil and pat it in, and another ELIA cutting. I wanted to show you guys also Pohina. This is one of the easiest plants to propagate that we have. This plant is really awesome for ground cover, because as it grows, it'll grow straight up and then it'll flop down and it'll start to grow this way along the ground. So this was one branch that was growing along the ground, and this plant will reroot at each of the nodes as it grows. So it makes it a really awesome plant for soil control, for soil erosion. It will help to hold large areas in place. It'll help to cover. It creates a really awesome ground cover that can cover a massive area. And it grows so easily. So with a cutting like this that was laying along the ground, you can use each and every single one of these nodes as a cutting. So you don't have to put it this way and take a bottom cutting and cut that off and clean that off. You can simply come along with your scissors, with your pruners, and cut in between each of these. As long as it's gonna fit in your pot laying down. So this is that laying down. I would clean off these bottom 2 leaves, the larger leaves. Pohina does not need rooting hormone. And then for this one, I'm gonna make a little trough with my finger right through the middle of this pot, and then just lay that branch directly down into there and pack the soil back over it. It's great to work with wet soil. Everything's gonna be nice and tight in the area. Pohina does wilt really quickly, so I'm gonna trim off the top of those. This was collected just 2 hours ago and it's already wilting really badly. So this is not viable. Don't use that for a cutting. Just stay in the areas that are either brown or dark green. Once it starts to get flexible like that, that's not gonna be so good. So you could get, you probably get about 10 cuttings off of this whole strip. Okay, So I know I've been talking for a really long time, but I did want to show you guys quickly the uki and how we can separate out plants. So if you are putting multiple seeds or multiple cuttings into one pot, then you can separate them out later. So with a bigger plant, or if these are really rooted together, I might give it a soak in a bucket of water and even just gently shake it around in water. Just agitate the soil a little bit so that it comes apart. First, go ahead and loamy the pot up so that it loosens the soil, squeezing the pot. And then I'm gonna grab the whole thing because this is a nice small pot. Flip it over. And I'm gonna try and save some of the soil. So we've got pretty good rooting going on for these little guys in here. And I'm just gonna let the plants, I'm not gonna force anything to come apart. I'm just gonna keep loaming and it will start to fall apart and the roots will come apart. So I've already got a nice section to work with. So I'm gonna put the rest of this back into the pot for now to keep it moist and pick the other section back up. So from here, we've got a pretty small section to work with and some nice good plants. So I'm just really gently grabbing at the base of one of these, letting a little bit of the other soil fall away and pulling those out. That's a pretty big cutting, or a pretty big little cakey plant right there. So we've already got our pots filled with the nice wet soil. When I'm separating and I'm gonna have kind of a big root mass like this, I'll typically put less soil into the pot so that I can add soil later. You want to get and dig a deep enough hole in there, at least up to your second knuckles, so that you're not going to crunch all the roots into place. So I'm just laying the seed, laying those roots down in there, and then gently putting some soil back around using my finger. Stand this up a little bit more. There we go. So just gently putting some soil back in around those roots, and then I can add some soil and just build the layer of soil up, not too high. You don't want to drown the plant. You don't want to choke it out, just right to the base. You don't want your soil level to come up any higher than it originally was on the plant. If you do that, you can cause rot at the base of the plant. Got that right down in there. And then I'll keep working on the rest of those to pull those apart. If I've got some that are really rooted together, I'll leave them. It's not a big deal to have two together. That's fine. They want to hang out. They grew together. They can keep hanging out. Another big one with nice root ball there. Smaller one. We'll get as many done today as we can. And these are all going to go into our project at Windward Community College to fill in some gaps and space over there where some of the older plants have died off. So got a good amount of seeds already, or of these keiki already separated. So I just lay them out in this pot. You can lay them out on a nice shady table and then do all of the pots at once. And then for anything that I don't get to today, if I don't get back to this pot, then I would fill in the gap with soil and try to get to it tomorrow. But likely I try to get through all of them in one day. So I wanted to share with you guys a couple resources before I say goodbye. One of my favorite guides for working on native plants is the Growing Hawaii's Native Plants book. This is a really awesome reference for a lot of different species. It talks about pest control. It talks about how the plant likes to be propagated, whether it's from seeds or cuttings, and what the best methods are for doing that. And it also talks about seed storage. So if you collect seed, how long those seeds might be viable being stored for. Another good resource is on our website, of course. We've got the Plant Propagation and Care Manual. So this is a really simplified version of that book, and it just hits a few of the common species that HOK is working with on our site. So if you guys are interested in checking out either of those references, the Propagation Manual is a PDF downloadable on our website for free. You can check that out. And then our main newsletter is going to go more into detail about propagation. And Giving Tuesday is coming up as well. Giving Tuesday is on Tuesday, May 5th. And if we are able to raise $200, then we're going to do another in-depth propagation lesson, and we'll be able to get people to sign up for that for free. But the $200 in donations from Giving Tuesday is going to allow us to put together packets of seeds and plants for people to follow along with at home. So today is just a little teaser, an intro to plant propagation, but we do want to do some more in-depth, whether those are virtual, again, over Zoom perhaps with that next platform, or if we are able to come together again in June. And if we're able to raise $500 on Giving Tuesday, then we'll bring in a guest propagator to show us how to propagate some more endangered and rarer species. And also some other techniques like doing air layers, something that I haven't done in a long time. So check out our newsletter. That'll be out on May 1st. And read up some more. One of our amazing board members wrote the intro article on plant propagation, and we'll have the information for the Giving Tuesday day there as well. So anybody else have questions before I sign back off? Awesome. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. I am going to save this live. It'll be on our feed for the next 24 hours, but hopefully we can record some more of these in the future. And I'd really love to get the packets out to people so people can practice along and play along with us as we do lives. So stay tuned again to our main newsletter. And since we're in another month of lockdown, I'm sure we're going to have some more lives for the month of May as well. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Ahuho.